In my last video I mentioned that I was in a bit of a creative slump, as evidenced by the lack of activity on this channel lately, and aside from being clinically fed up, boo-hoo, I have also been missing inspiration. I didn't know what I was going to make a video about next, and I spent a lot of time just sitting on the sofa watching films. But then along came Mina the Hollower. Mina the Hollower is the new game from Yacht Club Games, and whilst being an excellent game in its own rights in 2026, it is also a game that reaches in and touches the soul of anyone my age that lived through the NES and Super Nintendo era. I was watching a Josh Strife Hayes video the other day where he talked about his experiment of streaming for a whole month, and whilst being a separate topic, he mentioned something with regards to why people watch streamers, and I think that it applies here. He said people want something new yet familiar, and in his context it would be the different games a streamer plays that provide the novelty, and the streamer you tune into again and again provides the familiarity. And Mina the Hollower to me is the very definition of new yet profoundly and heartwarmingly familiar. First off, just the look of this game pulls me back in time to my childhood. Let's just enjoy the game's intro scene together for a moment. Pretty fucking sweet. Now, I love pixel art, and in the modern era of indie games in particular, there has been a bit of a resurgence of the craft for a number of years now, and many people have pushed it way beyond the confines of what it used to be. Games like Eastward or Sea of Stars are good examples to my mind of beautiful and detailed pixel art. Also games like Look Outside. These games utilise lots of different colours and additional effects to create something more than the art of the past. But Yacht Club Games achieve a lot of expression whilst operating within the limitations of the 8-bit era. The other examples I cited are using everything at their disposal in the modern age, but Yacht Club apply arbitrary limitations to themselves which add a level of period-appropriate authenticity to their games, which is in no small part why they feel like such a time capsule to the past. The NES graphics capability was limited to 256 by 240 resolution and was only capable of displaying 25 colours at any one time from a palette of 54. And Yacht Club used this as a guide, rough guide, to inform the way their games look and feel, and we can see this in both Shovel Knight and Mina the Hollower. I am fascinated with the concept that limitations promote more creativity, having to find ways around them, and Mina the Hollower's world manages to pack so much expression into so few pixels. If we look at any of the sprites, Mina in particular, you can see that there isn't a whole lot to work with there, and yet I find it beautiful. I think that Yacht Club do step slightly outside of the lines at times to add a little extra punch, but having these limits benefits the game overall. I am primarily a Super Nintendo kid. I never had a NES as I grew up with a Sinclair Spectrum and then an Amiga before I got a Super Nintendo, but I had friends who had the original Nintendo, and I always thought that compared to the bright and almost juicy graphics and colour of the SNES, the NES always looked kind of dull and I didn't really like the colours that were chosen. But Yacht Club may have limited the amount of colours they use at any one time to create an authenticity, but their choice of colours are not limited, and there is more going on with how they've chosen those colours, which provides that new yet familiar feeling. But it isn't just the graphics that provide that feeling, it is the game itself. So the story of Mina the Hollower isn't exactly groundbreaking, but to cut a long story short, Mina helped create these spark towers which power the kingdom, and they have started to go a bit screwy and you are called back to travel around fixing them. There is a bit of intrigue and mystery along the way, but all in all, pretty standard stuff and not out of scope with how much story you would expect to get in a game of my childhood. But where Mina the Hollower might not be story rich, it is rich in its world, which for me is just what I want. There are so many little characters just walking around which you can speak to all of them, but it is that combined with the general world design that just works for me because I am not a story driven person. I'm more of a world building person. I like to see stuff that paints a picture of what this world is like and what's in it, and my imagination fills in some of the blanks. It's probably why I like some pretty terrible films that on a story or performance level objectively suck, but just because they paint a vivid picture of the world and the stuff around that story, I really enjoy them. But more important than the story is the gameplay, and again, we are back in the new yet familiar territory. It is like any number of top-down action RPGs you played in the past, but with the snappy controls of a modern platformer. And I say platformer because despite being a top-down game, it manages to be a legitimately challenging platformer, showing Yacht Club's lineage from Shovel Knight. The game is not just challenging because of the platforming, it has a Dark Souls-like element where you will use a currency, bones, that allows you to upgrade your stats as the game progresses. And it will never get old being told that it's time to bone up. Healing is akin to using an Estus flask and takes a little while to perform, meaning it has to be timed right, which means you have to learn enemy attack patterns. Your dodge is replaced by a burrowing mechanic where you jump in the air, keep holding the jump button and then burrow under the ground for a period of time. Another thing that takes a bit of getting used to with regards to timing. It is also used in many of the platforming challenges as well as a whole host of other inventive and creative mechanics. And this is truly a creative game from top to bottom. And I've said the word challenging a lot, and make no mistake, this game is genuinely challenging. But on the topic of challenge and creativity, I want to talk about the modifiers that exist in the game. You can change so much, it is almost a creativity in itself. This isn't just your easy, normal and hard modes with some accessibility features thrown in. This is an insane amount of tweaks that you can make to the game to play it your way. For instance, the whole losing bones thing and slow heal animation, that is the kind of shit that will really demoralise me personally, and as I played through the first hour I could tell that that was really going to grate on me. But the visuals, the theme and the general control scheme made me want to persevere with it if possible. So as I had heard that there were these modifiers, I decided to have a look. And I'm glad that I did, because I tweaked the game so that I didn't lose bones and that instead of having to use a heal, I would just heal a portion of health when I picked up plasma, which was another currency that exists within the game. So it changed the game ever so slightly to where the challenge was in the combat and the platforming and the puzzle solving, but not in the things that would have eventually frustrated me so much I would have put it down. You can just make the heal animation quicker, or change the amount of damage you take to slightly less, or more than that if you want, as well as remove damage from falling down pits, or even if you want to, remove the possibility of falling down pits at all, as well as a whole host of other settings, but it just allowed me to remove that very personal friction. But even with these changes, it was a very challenging game, and I was losing my mind on some of the ice levels where I was just sliding all over the place. But I finished the game, and because I was able to just change it enough for my taste, I still had an immense amount of satisfaction and achievement at the end. I think my PSA here would be that don't let what you may have heard turn you off. These modifiers may not be very well signposted, and the game will start in the way the devs have set out as the standard way to play, heavy air quotes, but owing to the strength of the design of the game, it stands up in whatever way you want to play it. So have a go, see how it feels in its normal state, and then make a judgment call after about an hour, like I did. I buy a lot of games, and too many in fact, and I don't finish more than probably 25% of them as I get bored and move on. So when a game comes along that I see the credits roll, I take that as a good sign. Especially as even with my tweaks, this still pushed me to the limits of these old hands and atrophied brain. At this point, I think this just might be my Game of the Year contender, which comes as a bit of a surprise for me, but I can't recommend it enough. Stay positive, stay creative, and I'll see you next time.